I thought I was just another mid-level software engineer at a tech startup in Austin, Texas. 28 years old, decent salary, working for a company that promised to revolutionize data management. What I didn't know was that my boss, Derek Chen, was systematically stealing code from our biggest client and selling it to competitors. And what he didn't know was that I had accidentally stumbled upon the evidence that would destroy his career and save mine. It started 3 months ago when I was working late on a Friday night, debugging our cloud storage integration. Our office was in one of those converted warehouses in East Austin, the kind where you can still smell the barbecue from Franklin's drifting through the windows. I was the only one left in the building, or so I thought, when I heard Derek's voice echoing from the conference room. He was on a video call, speaking in hushed tones about package delivery schedules and client specifications. Nothing unusual there, except for one thing. The client he was discussing was supposed to be our biggest competitor. I should have minded my own business. I should have packed up my laptop and headed to 6th Street like any normal Austin 20-something on a Friday night. Instead, I did something that would change everything. I started recording. That night, I unknowingly captured Derek admitting to stealing proprietary algorithms worth over $2 million. But here's the thing about being a software engineer, we're paranoid about data loss. Everything gets backed up. Everything gets stored in the cloud. And sometimes, the people trying to cover their tracks forget about the automatic systems they can't control. Derek thought he was smart. He thought deleting the files from my local drive would make the problem disappear. He had no idea that every keystroke, every file, every piece of evidence was sitting safely in our company's own cloud backup system. The same system he had insisted we implement for security purposes. This is the story of how my boss tried to frame me for his crimes, how he humiliated me in front of the entire company, and how his own paranoia about data security became the weapon I used to expose him. It's about standing up to corruption in Silicon Hills, where image matters more than integrity, and where sometimes the underdog wins not because of courage, but because of good backup protocols. Growing up in a middle-class family in Round Rock, just north of Austin, I learned early that success wasn't just about what you achieved, it was about how others perceived your achievements. My father, Robert Martinez, worked as a project manager for Dell for over 20 years. He was the kind of man who believed that keeping your head down and following the rules would eventually pay off. My mother, Linda, taught elementary school and always emphasized the importance of doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. Our family gatherings were typical Texas affairs, backyard barbecues during football season, Easter egg hunts at my grandmother's house in Cedar Park, and Christmas celebrations that always included my father's famous tamales recipe that had been passed down through 3 generations. These events were supposed to bring us together, but they often became stages for my father to showcase what he called life lessons. I remember when I was 15, I had been selected for the regional computer programming competition. I was excited. It was the first time I had ever excelled at something that felt important. During our annual 4th of July gathering at Lake Travis, with about 30 family members present, my father decided to make an announcement. He stood up, beer in hand, and told everyone about my achievement. But instead of celebrating, he used it as a teaching moment. You know, Miguel here thinks he's pretty special because he can make computers do tricks, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear over the sound of boats on the lake. But let me tell you something, being smart with computers doesn't mean you're smart about life. Real success comes from working with people, not hiding behind a screen. My cousins snickered, my uncles nodded approvingly, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment as I stared down at my plate of brisket and coleslaw. That humiliation taught me something my father never intended, that sometimes the people who are supposed to support you are the ones who cut you down to make themselves feel better. It was a lesson that would serve me well years later when dealing with Derek. The second incident happened during my high school graduation party. I had been accepted to UT Austin with a partial scholarship for computer science, something I was incredibly proud of. Instead of celebrating, my father spent the evening telling relatives that I was book smart but not street smart, and that college would probably humble me real quick. He even joked that I would probably come crawling back home within a semester, begging for a job at the local Walmart. That night, I made myself a promise. I would prove him wrong, Not through confrontation or arguments, but through results. I would build a career that spoke for itself, surround myself with people who valued competence over politics, and never let anyone make me feel small again. But here's the secret I've never told anyone, not even my parents. That humiliation drove me to become obsessive about documentation and evidence. Every project I worked on, every conversation that mattered, every achievement and setback, I started keeping detailed records. It became second nature, a defense mechanism born from years of having my words twisted or my accomplishments minimized. Little did I know that this compulsive need to document everything, born from childhood humiliation in Texas backyard gatherings, would become the tool that saved my career and exposed one of the biggest corporate fraud cases in Austin tech history. Comment below and let me know where you're watching this from. I'd love to hear from fellow Texans who understand the unique pressure of family expectations in our state. The company-wide quarterly meeting was scheduled for a Thursday in late September, right when Austin's brutal summer heat was finally starting to break. Our startup, Cloud Vault Solutions, was preparing for what Derek called our make or break presentation to potential investors. The entire team of 43 employees would be there, along with board members and 2 major venture capital firms from Dallas. For weeks leading up to the meeting, Derek had been acting strangely. He would show up to the office at odd hours, sometimes as early as 5 a.m., and I'd catch him going through file systems that weren't related to his normal responsibilities. When I asked about it, he'd brush me off with comments like, "Just making sure everything's secure for the big presentation, Miguel. You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under." The week before the meeting, Derek announced that I would be presenting the technical architecture of our flagship product, a cloud-based data management system that we had developed for Meridian Financial, Austin's second-largest credit union. It was unusual for someone at my level to present to investors, but Derek said it would be good experience for me. Looking back, I realize he was setting me up. 3 days before the presentation, I was working late again, trying to perfect my slides in the conference room that overlooked Lady Bird Lake. The office building's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of the Austin skyline, with the Capitol dome lit up against the night sky. Derek walked in around 9 p.m., which was odd because he usually left by 6. "Still here, Miguel? You know, dedication is admirable, but you need to be smart about it," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "Speaking of being smart, I need you to make a small change to your presentation. Remove the section about our proprietary algorithm development process. The investors don't need to know those details." I found it strange, but Derek was the boss. What I didn't know was that he was panicking. 2 days earlier, Meridian Financial had called a meeting with our competitors, questioning whether some of their proprietary code had been leaked. Derek knew the heat was closing in, and he needed someone to take the fall. The night before the presentation, I received an email from Derek at 11:47 p.m., sent from his personal Gmail account instead of his company email. The subject line read, "Urgent, Security Breach Protocol." The message was brief. "Miguel, I've discovered unauthorized access to our client files. We need to discuss this first thing tomorrow morning. Do not discuss this with anyone else on the team." I spent the night running through possibilities in my mind. Had our system been hacked? Had I made a mistake in the security protocols? The uncertainty was eating at me, especially since I knew my presentation could determine the future funding of our company. The morning of the presentation, Derek called me into his office at 7 a.m., 2 hours before the investors were scheduled to arrive. His office was a corner space decorated with typical Austin startup flair, exposed brick walls, vintage Texas maps, and a neon sign that read, "Keep Austin Weird." But his demeanor was anything but casual. "Miguel, I'm going to be direct with you. We have a problem," he said, not making eye contact. "Our security audit revealed that someone with your access credentials has been copying proprietary code and client data. I have evidence of unauthorized file transfers from your workstation to external servers." My stomach dropped. "Derek, that's impossible. I would never." "I don't want to hear excuses," he interrupted. "The board is already here, the investors arrive in an hour, and I have to decide whether to call the police or handle this internally. You're going to get up in that presentation and explain to everyone how your negligence compromised our biggest client. As he spoke, I noticed something on his desk that made my blood run cold. It was a printed email thread between him and someone at Meridian Financial discussing the secure transfer of proprietary algorithms for competitive analysis purposes. The emails were dated 3 weeks ago, right around the time I had recorded his late-night phone calls. Derek was not just covering up his crime, he was actively framing me for it. And he was planning to humiliate me in front of the entire Austin tech community to save his own skin. That's when I realized something crucial. Every file Derek claimed I had stolen, every piece of evidence he said implicated me, was stored in our cloud backup system. The same system that automatically recorded every login, every file access, every data transfer with timestamps and user authentication. Derek had forgotten about the cloud backup, and that oversight was about to cost him everything. If you're enjoying this story of corporate corruption in Austin's tech scene, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. We're working toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us share more stories of people standing up to workplace injustice. The presentation started at 9 a.m. sharp in our main conference room, which we had converted into a makeshift auditorium with folding chairs borrowed from the Austin Convention Center. The entire team was there, developers, designers, sales staff, and admin personnel, along with the board members and the 2 VC firms from Dallas. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the room as Derek began his opening remarks about Cloud Vault's revolutionary approach to data security. For 20 minutes, Derek painted a picture of our company as the future of secure cloud storage. He talked about our partnerships, our growth projections, and our uncompromising commitment to client confidentiality. The investors nodded approvingly, taking notes on their iPads and occasionally whispering to each other. Then Derek introduced me. I'd like to bring up Miguel Martinez, one of our lead developers, to discuss some critical security issues we've recently discovered. His tone was professional, but I caught the slight smirk as he handed me the microphone. He expected me to confess to crimes I didn't commit, to humiliate myself in front of Austin's tech elite and accept responsibility for his theft. I walked to the front of the room, laptop in hand, and connected to the projector. Instead of opening the presentation Derek expected, I opened my File Explorer and navigated to our cloud backup system. "Thank you, Derek," I said, looking directly at him. "You're absolutely right that we need to discuss security issues. Specifically, we need to discuss how proprietary code worth over $2 million was stolen from our biggest client and sold to competitors." The room went silent. Derek's face went pale, and I could see him calculating whether to interrupt me or let me continue. The investors looked confused but intrigued. 3 months ago, I accidentally recorded a conversation in this very conference room, I continued, clicking to open an audio file stored in our cloud system. "Let me play it for you." Derek's voice filled the room through the speakers. "The Meridian algorithms are ready for delivery. Tell your client the package includes the authentication protocols they requested. Transfer confirmation to my personal account by Friday." The response came from someone clearly not affiliated with Cloud Vault. "Excellent work, Derek. This gives us exactly what we need to undercut their security model. Payment will be processed as discussed." The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other. Investors looked at Derek with expressions ranging from shock to disgust, and our employees began whispering frantically. Derek stood up, his face now red with anger. "Miguel, what do you think you're doing? This is clearly fabricated, is it?" I interrupted, clicking to the next file. "Because here's the email thread between you and Meridian's competitor, NextGen Financial. All time-stamped, all authenticated by our own security protocols." I displayed the emails on the projector screen, showing Derek's personal Gmail account coordinating the sale of Meridian's proprietary algorithms. The timestamps matched perfectly with the audio recording. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. "And here," I said, opening another window, "is the access log showing that all of these files were downloaded using Derek's administrative credentials, not mine. Every file transfer, every unauthorized access, every stolen piece of code, all traced back to Derek's login. Derek made one last desperate attempt to regain control. This is absurd. Miguel has clearly manipulated these files. He's trying to frame me for his own mistakes. That's when I played my final card. I opened a screen recording that I had made weeks earlier, showing Derek's computer screen as he accessed Meridian's files after hours. The recording clearly showed him copying proprietary algorithms and uploading them to an external server. The beauty of cloud backup systems, I said to the stunned room, is that they capture everything. Every screen session, every file access, every keystroke. Derek, you insisted on implementing these security measures yourself. You just forgot that they would also document your own criminal activity. Derek realized he was beaten. The evidence was overwhelming, authenticated by the very security system he had championed. He looked around the room at the faces of people who now saw him for what he really was, not a visionary CEO, but a common thief who had betrayed his clients, his employees, and his investors. Without saying another word, Derek gathered his papers and walked toward the door. As he passed my chair, he leaned down and whispered, "You have no idea what you've just done to yourself, Miguel. This company will be bankrupt within a month." But he was wrong. As Derek left the building for the last time, the investors were already discussing how to restructure the company with new leadership. The board members were calling emergency meetings. And our employees were finally free from the toxic culture Derek had created. The man who had tried to humiliate me in front of Austin's tech community had instead exposed himself as a fraud. And all because he forgot that in the digital age, the cloud never forgets. The hour after Derek's exit was pure chaos. Sarah Kim, our head of operations and the closest thing we had to a second-in-command, immediately called an emergency staff meeting while the investors huddled in Derek's former office with the board members. The conference room buzzed with a mixture of relief, anxiety, and disbelief. Everyone was asking the same questions. What happens to our jobs? Will the company survive? And how long had Derek been stealing from our clients? Within 2 hours, I received a call from Janet Morrison, the managing partner at Meridian Financial. Word travels fast in Austin's tight-knit business community, and she had already heard about the morning's revelations through her network of contacts in the local tech scene. Instead of the anger I expected, her voice carried a tone of gratitude mixed with professional determination. "Miguel, we need to meet today," she said. "Bring everything you have. We're prepared to offer Cloud Vault a new contract, a real one this time, based on trust and transparency." That afternoon, I found myself in Meridian's downtown offices near the Texas state capitol, presenting the same evidence that had brought down Derek to a room full of executives and lawyers. But this time, instead of exposing fraud, I was helping to rebuild trust. Meridian's legal team was already preparing to press charges against Derek, but they were also interested in something else, hiring Cloud Vault to help them audit their security and recover from the breach. The unexpected twist came 3 days later. While reviewing Derek's files more thoroughly, our new interim CEO, Sarah Kim, who had been promoted by emergency board vote, discovered something that changed everything. Derek hadn't just been stealing from Meridian. He had been running a sophisticated operation, selling proprietary code from at least 6 different clients to their competitors across Texas and beyond. The FBI got involved on Friday of that same week. Agent Lisa Rodriguez, a cybercrime specialist based out of the Austin field office, arrived with a team of forensic accountants and digital investigators. What we had uncovered wasn't just corporate theft, it was a multi-state conspiracy involving over $12 million in stolen intellectual property. "Your documentation habits saved more than just your job, Miguel," Agent Rodriguez told me as we sat in the conference room where everything had started. This cloud backup system captured evidence of one of the largest corporate espionage rings we've seen in Texas in the past 5 years. But the real healing began in the weeks that followed. Sarah implemented new policies that emphasized transparency and accountability. She instituted weekly all-hands meetings where anyone could ask questions about company direction, finances, and decision-making. The toxic culture of secrecy and fear that Derek had fostered was replaced by something Austin's tech community rarely sees: genuine collaboration and mutual respect. My relationship with my family also began to change. When the story broke in the Austin Business Journal and later in the Austin American-Statesman, my father called me for the first time in 6 months. Instead of the criticism I expected, he offered something I had never heard from him before, an apology. "Miguel, I need to tell you something," he said during a phone call that lasted 2 hours. "I was wrong about you. I was wrong about technology, and I was wrong about what it means to be successful. You did something I could never do. You stood up to someone who had power over you, and you did it the right way." That conversation led to our first real family dinner in 3 years. This time, instead of humiliation, there was pride. My mother cried when I told her the full story, and my father actually asked me to teach him about cloud computing and cybersecurity. The man who had once dismissed my computer skills as hiding behind a screen now wanted to understand the technology that had exposed one of the biggest corporate fraud cases in Austin's recent history. Cloud Vault not only survived Derek's departure, we thrived. Within 6 months, our employee count had doubled. We had landed 4 major new clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies relocating to Austin, and we had been featured in TechCrunch as one of the most promising cybersecurity startups in Texas. The investors who had initially come to evaluate Derek's leadership ended up leading a series of funding round that valued our company at $15 million. The grand gesture Derek had planned, the impressive presentation that was supposed to secure major funding while framing me for his crimes, had indeed secured major funding. Just not for him. Derek himself was arrested 4 months later at his new apartment in Dallas, where he had been trying to start another company using stolen credentials and fabricated references. He eventually pleaded guilty to federal charges of wire fraud, computer fraud, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution of over $8 million to the companies he had defrauded. But perhaps the most satisfying resolution came from an unexpected source. In October, I received a LinkedIn message from Marcus Chin, Derek's younger brother and a software engineer at Google's Austin office. Marcus had seen the news coverage and wanted to apologize for his brother's behavior. We met for coffee at Radio Coffee on Barnett Springs Road, and he told me something that put Derek's actions in perspective. Derek always thought he was smarter than everyone else, Marcus explained over locally roasted coffee while food trucks gathered in the background. Growing up, he never learned how to fail gracefully or admit when he was wrong. He saw your competence as a threat to his authority, and instead of learning from you, he decided to destroy you. That conversation helped me understand that Derek's betrayal wasn't really about me. It was about his own insecurity and inability to lead with integrity. It also reinforced something I had learned from those childhood humiliations. Sometimes the people who try to tear you down are really just revealing their own weaknesses. Today, I serve as Cloud Vault's Chief Technology Officer. We've expanded to 3 offices across Texas, and we specialize in helping companies implement the same kind of comprehensive backup and security systems that ultimately saved my career and exposed Derek's crimes. Every new client gets the same advice. In the digital age, transparency isn't just good ethics, it's good business. The obsessive documentation habits born from childhood humiliation had evolved into a company philosophy that now protects businesses across the Southwest from exactly the kind of fraud Derek had perpetrated. Looking back on that September morning when I exposed Derek's crimes in front of Austin's tech elite, I realized that every humiliation I had endured, from my father's dismissive comments at family barbecues to Derek's attempts to frame me, had been preparing me for that moment. Not because I was seeking revenge, but because I had learned something crucial about standing up for what's right, even when you're afraid. The boy who once stood embarrassed at a Lake Travis family gathering, listening to his father minimize his achievements, had become a man who could face down corporate corruption with evidence, integrity, and calm determination. The defensive habit of documenting everything, born from years of having my words twisted, had evolved into the weapon that brought down one of Austin's most sophisticated fraud schemes. But this story isn't really about me, or even about Derek. It's about something I see happening all across corporate America, especially here in Texas where relationships and reputation matter so much. People in positions of power abuse that power, silence those beneath them, and create cultures where fear prevents good people from speaking up. They count on our silence, our need for job security, our reluctance to rock the boat. What I learned is that the truth has a way of surfacing, especially in our digital age where everything leaves a trail. The cloud doesn't lie, data doesn't have political motivations, and evidence speaks louder than authority. Derek thought he could control the narrative by controlling me, but he forgot that technology itself would preserve the truth. 6 months after Derek's arrest, I spoke at a cybersecurity conference in downtown Austin, sharing our story with IT professionals from across the Southwest. The audience wasn't just interested in the technical aspects of our security system, they wanted to know how to build workplace cultures where employees feel safe reporting misconduct, where transparency is valued over loyalty, and where doing the right thing is supported rather than punished. That's when I realized this experience had given me something more valuable than career success. It had given me a platform to help others facing similar situations. Cloud Vault now offers free cybersecurity consultations to whistleblowers and small companies that suspect internal fraud. We've helped expose 3 other cases of corporate theft across Texas, and we've prevented countless others through our security auditing services. The most important lesson I want to share is this. Your integrity is worth more than your comfort. When you witness wrongdoing, document it. When you're pressured to stay silent, remember that your silence protects the guilty and endangers the innocent. And when you're afraid of the consequences of speaking up, remember that the consequences of staying silent are often much worse. Derek is serving his 6-year sentence at a federal facility in Oklahoma. Cloud Vault just signed our largest contract yet, a 5-year deal with the state of Texas to upgrade cybersecurity infrastructure for state agencies. And my father? He now tells anyone who will listen about his son, who brought down corporate fraud with computer skills and moral courage. Sometimes the people who try to humiliate you end up giving you exactly what you need to succeed. Derek's attempts to destroy my reputation forced me to become better at my job, more careful with evidence, and more confident in my own judgment. His betrayal taught me that real strength doesn't come from authority or intimidation. It comes from competence, integrity, and the courage to use both when it matters most. If this story resonated with you, I want to hear about it. Hit that like button if you believe in standing up to workplace corruption. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories about people who chose integrity over comfort. And leave a comment telling me about a time when you had to decide between staying silent and speaking up. Your story might inspire someone else to do the right thing. Remember, in the age of cloud computing and digital records, the truth has a way of surviving even when powerful people try to delete it. Sometimes all it takes is one person with the courage to hit, restore from backup, and show the world what really happened. Thanks for watching, and remember, keep your backups current and your conscience clear. You never know when you might need both.